Drama, American Beauty with Kevin Spacey. Number 4 is Lost in Translation. Number 3 is a movie that probably could have been a comedy, but I think it works well in drama. The Royal Tenenbaums. And I realized that I have 2 movies in drama with Bill Murray and only 1 in comedy. I don't know how that happened. Say Anything is number 2 with John Cusack. Huh? John Cusack? See what I'm saying? And Ione Skye. It's a Cameron Crowe movie. And Lloyd Dobler, played by John Cusack, is a big hero of mine. And is the reason I wear a trench coat today. It's because of Lloyd Dobler. And number 1 is Citizen Kane. And I guess it could feel like a cheat, like, oh, Citizen Kane. But it really is. If it's not the single greatest movie ever made, it is easily one of the greatest films ever made. Because I don't know how many films you've watched of this era. It was like 1940, 41 or something like that. So many films of this era feel like a play that's just being shot and edited together. And this was one of the first films that really, at least in American cinema, that let the camera be the narrator and tell the story and go back in time and kind of piece it together. And I watched this not too long ago, showing it to Lindsay for the first time, and she said something that I actually didn't expect her to say. She told me she was surprised how funny she thought it was. And I thought about it, it's like, yeah, actually there is a lot of great humor in this film. And it does have a reputation of being the greatest movie ever made, like it's a fucking homework assignment. It's actually fun to watch. And I enjoy that movie. And I'm going to add this. My all-time favorite movie is Pulp Fiction. There. That's my personal favorite film. Now, I'm done with those questions. Let's move on to PM Night 12. And you asked me, hold on, I put the notes to your questions over here for some reason. You asked me, let's see, as someone, let's see, oh wait, whoops, oh, yeah, paragraph here. Who are your top favorite comic book writers and artists? Today, I've already answered writers, so I won't bother getting into that. My favorite artists are Chris Picciollo, Alex Ross, Norm Brayfogle, Mike Mignola, and John Romita Jr. Those guys are just brilliant. Let's see, you also asked me, let's see, what are the 3 most impactful things that's happened in comics since you've been reading them? And that's roughly 30 years, so that's like mid-70s. I won't count the direct market because that kind of started a little bit before I started reading comics, so I can't really mention that. But I was thinking, and the problem is, things. I'm not sure if that is a creative benchmark you're asking, or maybe a business one, so let me just break it down into both. Story, I'd say Crisis of Infinite Earths, the big DC crossover. I think that's had a lot of effect on crossovers ever since. Watchmen, I think that had a lot to do with the way character and story are told and the way narration is told. If you look at a comic written in the early 80s or 70s, it feels a lot different than comics today, and that's partly due to books like Watchmen. And Watchmen also led into Vertigo from DC Comics, the mature reader's line. And I think that helped mainstream books like this, where you don't have to put on tights in order to be a mainstream book. And you don't have to just say, oh darn. You could say, fuck! And it would still be okay. Now, business. I think the trade paperback markets had a lot to do with a lot going on, and these are just personal opinions. The comic book industry really needs to build, and from the devastating losses in the 90s. And I think part of that is rebuilding its reputation among non-readers and mainstream people. Because, you know, it's always had, you know, we know the reputation comics have. And now you go into a Barnes & Noble or a Borders, and there's a nice, good display of graphic novels and comic books. And I think that has a lot to do with helping it out. Let's see. Marvel's bankruptcy, actually, I think is very important, because I don't know how much you know about this, but in the 90s, Marvel was owned by a gentleman named Ron Perlman, and no, I'm not talking about the actor. I think he was the owner and CEO of Revlon, I think. He took over Marvel, not because he was a huge comic book fan or anything like that. He saw a business opportunity. And, let's see, under his watch, Marvel was kind of sort of becoming the next Disney in a bad way. Their characters were becoming less about character. Their stories were becoming less about that. And they were becoming more and more like name brands. Especially Spidey books. Man, Spidey books in the 90s were just dreadful. And a lot of the other mainstream books were from Marvel were pretty bad. Because and this is when like the flashy covers was becoming really, really important over at Marvel. Marvel was considering expanding into other venues, like they were going to do their own Marvel stores, like the Disney and Warner Brothers stores. I remember like having friends who owned comic book stores. They were really worried about this kind of shit. And then the bottom dropped out, and then Marvel went bankrupt. Not long after that, Ron Perlman left the company, and thank God, because it seemed really bad at the time, but I think Marvel's bankruptcy was actually one of the best things to happen to comic books as far as the business was concerned. And I'm glad that Marvel has been able to rebuild after all these years. And I think Image. Is very important. I think at first it looked like they were kind of stumbling over their own egos, but once they got over themselves a little bit, they've really improved the industry overall. You pick up, there's so much great variety in Image, and the books over at Image, you can have superhero stuff or action stuff or like G-rated stuff or R-rated stuff, and it's all creator-owned. And I think what they have now is exactly what they said they were going to do in the beginning, and I'm really happy to see the kind of company they've created. And I think it's improved the whole comic book industry, just their existence. Okay, and I think that was it as far as your questions. Oh, you asked, not including yourself, who are your top 5 vloggers that you like? And I don't know, I had trouble kind of cutting that down to 5. So I like Gotham Girl, I like Blow Himself Up Dude, Edible Napalm, Energon Gal, The Amazing Atheist, Zomagoddess, I think is how she pronounces her name. She's Romanian, and she talks about politics and stuff like that. Thunderfoot, the movie preview critic, Decompose, and Terra Geek. I always enjoy your videos. I think you guys all do an amazing job. Okay, now that's the last one. Let's see. What's your favorite? Oh, Vandororf asks me, what is your favorite Batman the Animated Series episode? And that should be hard because there's so many great episodes. But I automatically go back to Almost Got Him. I think that's from the first season or something like that, from when they were on Fox. The villains are all hiding out from Batman and the cops, and they're just trading stories over a game of cards, how they almost killed Batman. And this episode has everything in one 20-minute story. It's just amazing work. Excuse me, I gotta get a drink. I've watched that over and over again. I believe that was written by Paul Dini. That was terrific.